Everyone. I see some familiar faces and some new ones. So hello, my name is Liz Erlewine and I'm the director here at Crooked Tree Art Center. And welcome to Coffee at 10. We have folks joining us here in person and sharing space together, and then folks virtually joining us by Zoom or Facebook. So thanks everyone for being here. Coffee at 10 is a program that Crooked Tree Art Center offers weekly when we have exhibitions in our galleries. So we welcome everyone to join us for a cup of coffee, pastries, courtesy support from Roast and Toast in downtown Petoskey. Yes. And of course, this program is also made possible thanks to our members. Crooked Tree Art Center members are really what make it possible for us to keep our doors open, our galleries and exhibitions free and open to the public, and programs like this available for you. So thank you, members. If you are not yet a member or want to know more, you can see Bobby at the front desk over there. Hey, Bobby, she'll tell you more and let you know if that's a good fit for you. We love Coffee at 10 because it brings people together to share in art and have conversation and learn about some of the exciting programming that's happening either directly here in our region or impacting community and arts in our region. Right now we are standing in the Gilbert Gallery and we see half of an exhibition called Art, Place, and Community, 10 years with Good Heart Artist Residency. This exhibition is really a treat to be able to bring to our community and to share with you today. You'll see a number of really inspiring pieces on display, but really it's made possible thanks to the good work of Good Heart Artist Residency, which is a program that brings in artists, writers, and composers to spend time sinking into their creative practice for a duration of time and then sharing that creative work with the community. Artist residencies are an important part of supporting arts practices and keeping artists going, right? And that's something that is very, important to the work that Crooked Tree Art Center does. We love to make artwork available for those of us who love to look at it, to appreciate it, to engage with it. But it's hard to keep going as a creative. And it involves support, and it involves space, and it involves community. And the work that Good Heart does is so important, but they are not the only artist residency that's out here. And in fact, we have another artist residency just in our neck of the woods here. And that brings us to our presentation today. So I'm very delighted to welcome Benjamin Cheney of the Croft Residency, dance residency here in the Horton Bay area. He's going to tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing for how many years now? 6 years. And in fact, Ben was going to join us for a coffee at 10 about 3 years ago when we were kind of, oh my gosh, COVID is here, what are we going to do? And so we tabled that, and somehow it took us 3 years to get back to this space, but really excited to have him here to talk about that program. And I just want to say a big thank you to Ben. And I think some of you know the work that he does for our community here. And one of the things that I'm most taken with is the way that Ben creates a space and presence and is really here with us. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and say a big thank you and turn it over to you to share. Thank you, Ben.
Is it okay if I go without the mic?
Yes.
Okay, I will hold this for our friends, our Zoom friends. So I was thinking about what's the way to start? I'm just going to kneel right now, so I'm not totally, and yeah, there's always a lot going on. Feels like there's a lot going on right now. And in lieu of all the things that are going on right now, and also to kind of bridge this idea of kind of land acknowledgement space, I'd say I'm going to start, or we're all going to start by taking a breath together, having 10 seconds to feel into our feet, to feel our body, and just kind of let grace drip through your bones into the floor, to say thank you to the land, and to just share love with the greater community. So breathing at your own time. On the exhale, just letting it all sink in. Thank you. The shared silence is one of my favorite things. So. Yeah, when thinking about what to say about a dance residency program, I said, oh man, okay, there's that lovely quote, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Okay, so that would mean, relatively speaking, if we extrapolate that quote, man, a dance is like worth 1,000,000. Right? That was my kind of my joke. Obviously, that's not the case because people feel disconnected from dance. And they're like, what is this dance thing? Feels so foreign. Like, what are you trying to say? And then it also made me come back to this idea that I forget who was sharing this with me the other day, but when we're like looking to understand what someone's saying, the first thing we look at, what they say, was like posture. Then we look at their eyes. Like, all the things that we're doing to understand, actually the words are the last thing. So in honor of that, and because I always start dancing, I'm going to say everything that needs to be said in like less than 30 seconds by moving. And you're probably all going to say, I have no idea what you just said. And that's perfect. But also, you probably also got a lot of the things. Because this idea of like mirror neurons, we're not going to get too deep into that, but it's just a thing to like point out there. Like, we see someone else's body feeling and emoting something, and we have the capacity in our bodies to feel and emote that thing, or it awakens that in us. And maybe that's all we're supposed to get, because maybe that's beyond words. So this is not going to be epic. It's just going to be 30 seconds of me trying to put this in. So we're done. Great. Thank you so much. So I guess I should start by saying I'm the artistic director of the Cross Residency, which is a dance residency program out of Portland Bay. And this is our 6th year. Much like Good Heart provides space and time for artists. And we like give them a stipend because what they do is worth the time. And like many artists, specifically dance artists that I know, they're working 3 jobs just to pay their rent. So they can't actually take the time to come unless you give them some support. And then we reimburse them for travel. So as many things, we're always looking for support to help support the artists. So that's the simple kind of beginning. And so all the pictures that I took are of the land or of the dancers. There's not many. It's a very short presentation in that context. But so this was taken in the spring on the Cross property. And this is the tamarack tree that we planted. And this is the male pine cone, the little baby male pine cone in the spring. So, and then there was a trail that we used to have that like meandered through to get to a pond. And I noticed as I was like weed whacking that trail that it was starting to get really populated with milkweed. So I was like, okay, probably can't have a trail here anymore. But I got 1 year of getting to take like sweet shots of pollinators on my favorite blossom. So that's the milkweed blossom. Hard to see. If you've ever had a chance, like up close, it's like, the tastiest for me. So that would be on the property, having some milkweed fun. So the terms that I want to go over today, these are not like roundabout residency terms, but they are for today, is embodiment and habitation, holding space, gift exchange, creative process, and dance and movement. And I feel like this one, you know, they kind of like do this because it's a dance residency program, we're gonna go like this. Give it to you twice. All right. So this is a picture of artists that came in 2022, and there's like this long creative process, and this is just a picture from rehearsal. And so it's a dancer, Greta, watching as they were named while they were here, Crab and Good Boy, like in this kind of duet. And when I think of embodiment in the habitation, this idea of like tracking who we are, where we are, how we connect with space location, I just love this quote by Bonnie, which says, "The mind is like the wind, the body is like the sand. If you want to know how the wind is blowing, you can look at the sand." So that's Bonnie backing up what I just said in the beginning that I didn't speak. You got it. My mind was moving, the sand moved, bam. So again, Bonnie's saying we're complete, but we'll keep going. You're here to listen to me talk and hopefully exchange a little. Okay. The other thing, so the thing to know that I love is that all art forms are embodied. Writing is an embodied art form. Neural pathways, fired fingers, to either type or write. There's like all these art, every art form has an embodied movement portion. The difference between dance and the other ones, a lot of the ones that we consider art or put in that like art realm, if it's not a performance art, is that the embodied practice happens before, and we're not paying attention to that or looking at that unless we see the brushstrokes, or unless we see, like, you know, we're like looking at the sculpture and we're like, oh, I see it. There's a hand down there. They didn't smooth that part out, you know, and then you can like create this fun, you can extrapolate this story. It's like all processes are embodied, but in dance, you're like in the moment of seeing it. In all the other ones, it's happening beforehand. I just wanted to shout out all those other embodied art practices that don't really get that shout out, right? Like painting is so, whew, all the musicians are like, we're seeing that embodied as well, but so often we hear the music recorded and then we've like lost that embodiment. We're like disconnected from like the strain or the holding or the grace or the fluidity. And then I just love the idea that in choreographed work, which is what many of the artists or the residents that are coming to engage with us, they're not doing choreographed work, they're doing creative process that's a little bit separate from that. So we're not there yet, but in this work, in the work of moving and creating, if we have a score, if we have choreographed work, the thing that I love about it is that, like the embodied practice of painting, like the emotion that you're feeling that's existing, that you're exuding as you paint, is visible in the brushstroke and it's there. When it's choreography, if this is my brushstroke, okay, I had a very clear, like right now, in this moment, this is how I feel. Man, I'm gonna do that again next time. I'm not gonna feel the same way. The pathway of movement is still the same, so that maybe original intention always exists. There's always this, but then maybe I'm in a rough day. And I do it again. The original intention is still there. It's the pathway that moved me, that gave me the way to move through space, but now I'm feeling it. Or maybe, that's my favorite thing, all things that I do are interactive. And I don't know why this is the movement we're doing today, but this is the movement we're doing today. So I will describe with words the movement, then we will all do the movement. But then it's that understanding that I may have done this movement in one way. And when each of you do that movement, it's a gateway into who I am, how I move, and how I feel. And by you doing that movement, you're having like an inkling of what does it feel like to be someone else or to be in someone else's emotional state. Right? Because if I'm just sitting and you take my posture, immediately there's like a whoa. You can feel whatever that posture feels like in your body. It may not be exactly how it feels, but it's resonant. So I'll describe this in great detail, just for fun, and then we'll all do it together. But so what we're doing is we're going to be rotating the palm immediately. And then we're going to be lifting from this pinky side of our hand to swipe up, pinky side to elbow. And then when we get up, we rotate through and then we. So we go, so it's like up, we're leading with the elbow. It's like you're about to give a gift and then you're like, no. Yeah. Right. And so then there's one thing there. And then we could also tell a story, as I kind of did, right? Where it could be that I'm grabbing something. I'm grabbing this thing, and as I grab it, it's soft, it's in my fingers, I'm holding it, and then I really want to give it to someone, so I turn to open it, and then it's actually a butterfly, it flies away. Right, and so it's like it's the same movement, but if I give myself a story, or in the context of, for my mom, if I give you a story, because she always talks about how it's so helpful if there's words, right? But if I give you the story, this now means something so different, and what it does is it changes the quality of my fingers. Because before I said here, but if we're picking something up gently, we have like that quality, the tonus exists in the hand. And so it's this idea of, for me, the residency is the space to explore embodiment, because it's this idea of tracking what does that feel like? What does it mean to do this motion right now, today? And how do I share that? How do I ground into that? And how do I give that out? And so the reason habitation is on there for me is it's this connection. Habitation is like, how do I have embodiment in myself? And then habitation is how do I extend the reach and the listening of my body to the reach and the listening of my environment. So how do I walk and pay attention to how the ground feels beneath me? How do I open up and listen to the wind and feel the wind on my skin? How do I meet a flower? Like, how do I go to a garden and be so grateful for what I'm seeing and smelling, but also giving this idea of, because we all have these practices of grounding, embodying, and meeting space. But for me, how does habitation mean that I can feel embodied, or that the artist can feel embodied, and through their practice and engaging with embodiment, because so often we're a minute and then, whoa, what happened? I'm not like this, you know, and then you're like, okay, hold on. Oh, wait, wow, what is that? Oh, wow, okay. I'm over here, I feel embodied. I lost it right there. You know, and so like allowing ourselves the grace to have that practice, like the kind of ebb and flow. And so habitation, in the way that I like to think of it, is that exploration of, okay, here we are. Ooh. Yeah, like, wow, there's this really cool stool here. Wow, yeah. Feeling and meeting the stool, and how does the stool engage with weight? So, just a thought there. Does anyone have any questions? I'll kind of do section questions. Do we have to do this again? Oh, okay, all right, well, thank you, my mom, everyone, thank you. Yeah, we will do it, I promise.
So you're talking about if you feel a certain way, you're following the same pathway. You do the motion anyway, but it comes out a little bit further. After you do the motion, does that change your feel?
See, this is a great, I think that's about tracking, right? I imagine the whole idea of embodiment, it's like such a crazy, feels like a big term, is the idea of listening to yourself. So if I know, okay, man, I chose this career, I've got to do all these moves, and I got to do this move today, I'm not feeling good. There's also this idea that this is going to get jumping ahead to the creative process here, but it's okay. Put a little in. Like if I feel that feeling and that sensation, that all becomes information that then informs my next chance of how I'll do it again. Like I'll never forget that moment. And it also reminds me that the first time we learn a movement, the space that we learn that movement in is like with that movement. In fact, I was thinking back as I was writing this. There's a piece that I did where I was like, well, right? I remember the exact location where I was doing that the first time. I don't remember any of the movements that I did, but I'm at the yard, I'm in the yoga studio / dance studio, the doors are wide open, it's late July, the sun's coming in on the one side, I can feel the transition in the floor from when I'm not on the sun to when I'm stepping on the sun, right? Like, that's there, and lives forever in that piece. So I think it's like, it just becomes like a Rolodex. And then Bonnie talks about the perceptual response cycle. So I think what you're speaking of is kind of like that.
Yeah.
So it's like I have this new sensation, so now that informs the next time I'm gonna do anything with my arm. The sensation and feeling that I had at that moment informs the next time I move my arm. I imagine it's not that the next time I do this movement, but like, man, if I really go into a reach and I feel that reach, I think the next time I reach, I can remember, oh wow, I can like really reach. Be asking with my arm. I can be like, Mo, I want you to call me. Right? It's not just like, man, I'm not, oh, thank you. It's like in my palm, I'm like, so, I think it's, yeah, it's possible. Okay, so as Polly asked. So the last story was a butterfly. I'm gonna ask that you can just make up your own story. But remember, the movement is here. Does not have to be this, because this was kind of like the butterfly story. It goes with this. So we'll just all take like 5 seconds to just think of a story or track where you are currently. And then we'll move. Lovely, thank you. And I think the other, the two other things for me to say about that real quick is when I was training with Anna Halpern in her Mountain Home studio at Tamalpa on this like the northeastern slope of Mount Tam. She specifically talked about the difference between sensing and feeling. Sensing being tracking sensation in the body, like, okay, my wrist is rotating, now my wrist is in flexion, I'm like lifting up to my fingernails to then reach out. And then feeling would be the emotive state that's happening when something's happening in your body. And the thing that I loved about how they framed it in Tamalpa was this idea of, okay, if I'm feeling frustrated, the question they always ask, because it's an expressive arts therapy program, is where are you feeling in your body that frustration? And to be able to like, then it's this idea of sensing and tracking. You're sensing a feeling. You're like, wow, I feel really frustrated. And I'm feeling that frustration for some reason right here, right? And then it's just clear. And then so how do you then go meet that space, move from that space to allow the frustration, which is trapped in your body, to kind of like move it. So the idea of sensing and feeling being different is a lovely thing that Anna proposed. Oh, sure. Okay. So holding space, I just love the idea of, it's such a therapy word. And so I just wanted to like list it as an existing thing, because like, what does it mean to hold space? And so one of the simplest things that I could think about was this idea that like when I arrived this morning, it's like, how are we going to set up the space? How do they already have the space set up? We get to be in a gallery with wonderful work. So that's already immediately holding us. We're surrounded by beautiful artwork. And then we're choosing how we're shaping. We're shaped in a circle because I like circles. So there's no hierarchy, even though there's this really big screen behind me. So there is a hierarchy, it's up there. I'm trying to be about the same height as you without a chair. But so there's like that kind of idea of like, what does it mean? And in a body mind centering context, as Bonnie would say, like what that's doing is engaging with our horizontality. And there's like specific glands that are related to that, which are related to the chakras. But ultimately, there's a gland that is the AV node, which is like your heart chakra, right? And that is this. And there's a gland right above it. That is where your thymus is, and that is. So like this space is how we're like, oh, you know, we're here. It's where we push from. Be like, that's my boundary. That's where we like reach. Be like, yeah, we can take that. And so this idea of holding space is how can we be present here, soft here, listening here, And so when the artists come, like I just put these ideas of like meeting of the process, deep listening, reflection, because those are also kind of these spaces of, okay, I'm here with you. I'm not going to propose anything, just listening to what you're saying, maybe reflecting it back, probably not going to give feedback. So like, what does that look like? And what does that feel like? And how is that revolutionary to just listen? Specifically to artists, right? Because we don't get to just listen when they apply. We have to tell them no or yes, which is so hard. And so like, once we've gotten past that cliff, which has to happen because all these people want this opportunity, how at that point are we just like, I'm just here with you, right? Whatever you need. And so this is an example of an aesthetic response image. And I use that because that's an expressive arts therapy term we did all the time at Tamalpa. But so every artist I have initial conversation with, they tell me about their creative process. And then from what they tell me about their creative process, I reflect back to them the notes that I took, the key like images or phrases they gave to me, and create something. And so this one was for Van and Alex this year. And the thing that they said, the thing I was like, that's an aesthetic response. That's an image. They said, we are tying our balloon to pleasure. And I said, yes. So that's this one. So this idea of like, how do we like meet another's process so that when they arrive, they know that we're also kind of in it. This idea of I'm not just like, okay, sweet, yeah, here's the house. Like, no, what moves you? And then like, oh, maybe I did a little reading on what pleasure means to other people, or I did a little reading on you, or I did a little reading on, or I moved the idea of like what's pleasurable in my body. So that's very simple, but any questions there?
It feels a little like intention, like what's your intention, maybe more
Sure.
circling back to what you said before, like what is your intention and then what are your actions
Mm.
you take and the feeling that's connected to that, if that makes sense.
Lovely, yeah, that's a part of the creative process slide we're gonna get to. Okay, sweet. So this is Megan Mazurek and co. They came this summer. We got Alonzo, Megan, Tyler. And so gift exchange to me is like, when I read Lewis Hyde's, oh man, I think it's like The Gift, the eroticism of gift exchange, or something like this, the erotic nature of gift exchange. My world was changed, still one of my favorite books of all time. So Lewis Hyde writes, and this is like kind of in the preface, it's the second half of the sentence. When you give a gift, there is momentum, and the weight shifts from body to body. And I said, oh, dance, hello. But also there's this like the idea that I love that he says, this idea that you needed to do that shift. If the shift doesn't happen, the gift is dead. And so once we receive a gift, we cannot keep it. If we keep it, the gift dies. And so I just meant like, oh, so I just love that idea and how simple that it is. And the reason that he said the erotic nature of it is this idea of like, if I give a gift to Liz, like there's something that happens, there's a connection that happens. Like I'm saying thank you for something, or I'm noticing Liz for something, like something happens there, right? There's this like, whoa, I've been seen, or wow. It's like, and so then when you felt seen, how do you then take that being seen to let someone else be seen? It's like that really silly commercial that happened, I feel it's the late 90s. It was like a money commercial or something, but like someone opened the door for someone, so then they picked up change for someone else. You know, like one of these ideas of like, but it is this simple idea of like when something big happens, if it's a gift, like something has to happen. It doesn't have to be the same thing, it doesn't have to be as big, but it's why I love art, because every art piece is giving us a gift. And the beauty of receiving that gift is that we then get to go give something from that to somebody else. It doesn't have to be like, wow, man, Shannon had a really great show in PC and it inspired me. And so now I'm going to start weaving so that I can have a show. So I then give you a weaved piece that no, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to be able to weave a piece. It's like years. I mean, maybe it's worth it. Maybe that's the culmination of the gift because I didn't let it die. But also it can be so much simpler. It can just be like, wow, I was so moved by this. Like, can you go see that? Or, man, I go see the piece that I come back and I then share with Shanna a movement response, or I share something about how what it meant to me. So like this idea of like not letting something sit because the gift is for all of us, for the greater space. So that's just, I wanted to cover that, but Lewis is my man.
I do have a comment or question on
Yeah.
that. So I think about this often with performance-related creative practices, theater, dance is relevant, there are other, obviously, practices as well. I can see how you're talking about this with, how important that exchange is for performers who are sharing, say, performance spaces like a stage together.
Yeah.
But what really resonates with me with what you just shared was how important that exchange is with the spectator, with the audience and the performer. Can you talk about what that means or how you help cultivate that? Because there's one that's such an active player and one that's a passive player, but that exchange is still critical for the art to
Yeah.
exist.
I don't know. I think that's a great question. I don't think I have an answer to that, but I do think that the thing that moves me is the idea that we're doing these things to move others. And so like all that we can hope is that we've done something that's touched someone in a way they feel like we've been maybe vulnerable enough with them or shared something true enough for them that they leave and in some capacity then feel compelled to give some type of gift to someone else. It doesn't have to be, I feel like that's the thing. It's like, it doesn't have to be related. Someone didn't have to come and see Ken and Alex's show and then leave, because one of the things they did was they would like name body parts and move from those body parts. So it'd be like elbow, 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 button, right? But it was all based on, usually what they did is they were, in the original iteration, they made it PG for us. It was all about like sexual organ movements or like movements that we have taboos on, and they would just do movements from those spaces and name them. So like you don't have to leave that show and go up to someone and be like, "Ask me." It'd be funny, it'd be a really funny way to pass on a gift, but totally not necessary, right? Like, it could just be like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm like, I felt uncomfortable in that space. Why did I feel uncomfortable? And just talking with someone about like, wow, something just happened, but like it moved something in me, right? Doesn't always have to be like, I'm so excited. It can also be like, that challenged me. And that's a thing, to be challenged by art is an incredible gift, because to be challenged by art is to be challenged in a decentered way, which is like confrontational, but it's also not like, I'm not coming up to someone and being like, hey, you need to believe what I believe. I'm presenting something and I'm on a stage often, or I'm behind a canvas that you can't see. So you don't actually have to be, you may be very confronted, but it doesn't have to be the same type of confrontation. It can be a decentered space. So I think the gift could also be that. Yeah.
So I think it's interesting to think about, as an audience member watching a dance performance, you show your appreciation with applause, you stand, you say something afterwards to the artist they're performing, but thinking about it as an audience member, so how can I take that forward and continue to share whatever that energy is beyond that?
Yeah.
How does that work on?
That's, yes, I think it's the interesting question, because, I think like dance, like going totally off script here, but like the true nature of dance is to come together as community to celebrate and honor. That's jumping ahead of things, not off script, jumping far ahead. But so like, what we all used to do is we'd have something we need to celebrate. We have something we needed to honor. And so we would honor that with song and dance. And the reason we were honoring it with dance is because we were leading the earth. We were giving the earth our rhythm. We were giving the sky, so we were doing that together, so that in that way, the gift was not even for another, it was for the greater. And we were all doing it together. It was like this collective gift that we were giving. And so now we've gotten into this age of specialization, and now dance is, I can't say it, it's for later, but this idea of like, what is dance? But yeah, in the performance context, it does feel hard, right? Because it's like, okay, I clapped, like I shared the appreciation with them, but there's the beautiful idea that Lewis Hyde states in this idea of gift exchange. But the most important thing in gift exchange is actually not that I give it back to Shanna. If I watch Shanna's work, the most important thing is that I open that gift exchange up. Because if I close the gift exchange, then it also then potentially could feel like that Shanna like could feel like an nursery. Could feel like Shanna now feels like she may give back because like it can create this kind of cycle of, oh wow, that's so sweet. And like, okay, when it's like, yeah, it's sweet, but also like I need everyone else to know that work is really cool, which I'll be seeing on Sunday. Shout out, right? I still be here? Okay, yeah. So like this idea of how do we open it up, expand, how do we hold the space, not hold the space, how do we like have it be big? Okay, creative process. This is just like a really quick re-rendering of Lawrence Halperin's RSVP cycle image, because I didn't want to pull it off the internet because it would have been really grainy. But so Lawrence Halperin developed this in coordination with Anna Halperin, and it's kind of this idea, and it also relates to the perceptual response cycle in a way, which I mentioned with Bonnie Baker's Cohen, which is about nerve impulses and like choices. In the sense that we have resources, and the resources are like the things that we have like right now in this room. Today, our resources are, we're sitting in a circle, and all of us, we've got the screen in front of us. For some reason, I'm kneeling, we are on Zoom, we've got this, the door slightly cracked open, we've got some medium lights. We're in a space filled with other art that's inspiring. Like these are current resources that we have. And then we could then build a score from that. And this is like, when you were talking about themes and intentions, or intentions and action, like this is like where Lawrence and Anna placed that bubble. So now we have our resources, and from our resources, we create this score, which is, as the way that they put it, theme, intentions, and actions. The most important thing of those three is the intentions, because you cannot have an action that does not meet an intention. If you write an action and it doesn't meet one of your intentions, or is a totally new intention, you either have to add that intention or take away the action. And so you set that score up, and then from that score, you like then go down and you do this lovely word that they created, which is value action. And the reason they use value action as opposed to evaluate something is because they wanted to be an embodied or active version of evaluating something. Like, wow, does that action fit the intentions? Or is that actually our theme? Is that what we want to explore? And then from that, diligence activity, you go to performance, and performance doesn't have to be, okay, here's an audience, I'm a dancer. Like that doesn't have to be performance. Performance could be, like the score could be making brownies. The intentions are these brownies need to be eaten by people who do not like gluten. Oh man, don't like dairy. But someone said they can't have almond milk, they can't have almonds, you know, and I need it for 30 people. Like these are the intentions, I need to feed 30 people, I've got all these dietary restrictions. And so the actions are, how do I engage with that? Okay, oh, no, wait, oh, that flour that I got actually had almond flour in it. Okay, so that one doesn't work, so I evaluate that. And the performance could be cooking the brownies and being like, nobody is gonna appreciate those brownies because I don't know how to make those brownies properly. And so then you now have the resource of Ben can't make those brownies. So you go back to the score and you adjust some things. You then reevaluate, okay, I think I need better choices. And then you cook the brownies again. And this time, because I've made a value action, I do it in an eighth of a batch. So I don't have a ton of brownies that taste terrible, but I don't know what to do. Just a random score thing. And then the thing that, so like the score is the most important part to us. And when we have our open call for applications, it's the heaviest weighted thing that exists for us, is how the artists present their score. So we've got all these things, we've got a CV, I would like to throw it out the window if I could, can't, it's fine. But then there's theme, intentions, and actions. And like, that's the bulk of the weight. There's previous work that exists and it's important, but the bulk of the weight is like, how do they express their theme? Do they understand when I'm asking them and how I'm asking them that the intentions should probably relate to the theme? Because you're trying to tell me how you work. And then when they write actions, do they understand that I listed in the thing that all actions must like meet an intention or like be, and sometimes you're like, wow, they don't understand what I'm talking about, which is great. And so then the feedback can be like, lovely, I'm sure you make great work, but in sharing the score, here's, you know, like here's the feedback of what did that action have to do with any of your intentions? Or did you actually have this intention, or how could you have written your intentions to better like encompass and support your action? So this is like a huge part for me, and I just love the fact that the book that I have is signed by Anna from Lawrence. So that's very cute.
I have a question about that as a process for your evaluation. That method of expressing the score, is that a commonly understood way of discussing the creative practice or expectation within your field? Or is that something that's like
I
a
think it's
little bit unique to?
I think it's something that's unique to, would be unique to Anna, but not unique to Anna. It would be unique to, there's a specific subset of the dance world that is super score based. And, you know, it came out like when Music Concrete came out, when we got like John Cage, like when John, like we got to this space where a lot of dancers started being like, oh, we're just gonna have a score. And so there's definitely a subsect of people that will very much understand that. So it's kind of like, it's in a sense self-selection, but also the idea of being able to like articulate in that way is so helpful and so freeing. So it's just like, I try and be super clear, like I give examples when we do it of like what it might look like. So that I'm trying, you know, you're not blindsiding
Yeah,
someone.
so if you're new to.
Right,
this,
so if I just put theme, intentions, and actions, I'm sure it'd be a hodgepodge, it'd be amazing, but like, we try and give the frame. And a lot of people are really, a lot of people really understand that intentions are super important, and so they've got like, sometimes they write like a paragraph, you know, and you're like, okay, well, it's a lot of intentions. We're gonna save the world with this work, like, we can, you know, so then you can just be like, how do you hone, right? So there's that really great question. So, yeah, thanks, I think it's a helpful tool specifically for me, because otherwise I'm like, how do I say no? Because so often, I mean, I'm like, the work sounds great. Your work samples look great. But they may not articulate a process. And so like, the biggest question is, how do you have someone articulate process through words unless there's a structure? Because so often, you know, what ends up happening is they tell some flowery thing that's like a project description. I don't care about project description. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, how do you engage with that beautiful project description? Because that tells me more about how you'll exist here and how we can better support you. Oh. So this is a great picture of well, yeah. Let's look at that smile. And then Donnell's in the back. And so this was from 2019. We had an open house in 2019. And this is from this like specific group of dancers is no longer together. There's one other dancer that was in this trio. It's Corey. So it's Deb, Donnell, and Corey. They were under the name of Element of Three, and they no longer collaborate. But very sweet ladies. At the time that they were here, they dubbed themselves my sister wives, which is like. And so I get to this point of dance and movement, and it is that question for me that was kind of addressed, like that I opened earlier. Like the original intention of dance was not to be like, hey, look at me, I'm beautiful, I can like express. Trying to like express something, feel like the right word. Like I can execute technical beauty. Like that was not the original intention of dance. Like at some point, court happened, Louis happened, and here we are, right? It was about court because it's court, you know, it's about presenting yourself really well. And so then that gets extrapolated. So we do all these things to it. And then, you know, all these things in modern dance happen. And then people are like, well, this dance. I'm just gonna sit here for 10 minutes, y'all to look at me, and then the lights are gonna go out, and y'all gonna go, what did I just watch? But it's still this idea of like that it's performative when like so much of the original intention of dance is like connection, and not just connection with each other, but connection with like whatever our feet are against, whatever our heads are beneath, and whatever's beside us, you know, because it would be like that ritual of like, oh, thank you for the rain. And I'm going to celebrate by dancing with everybody, with some of the rain, and bless the water and thank the water. Thank you that we have this water. We do something else with it before we drink it. You know, like it was a part of a ritual concept. So the question that I pose to you, what is to you? It doesn't have to be like a. This is a big question. What is it? So what?
Oh, I guess it depends on who it is. To me, I can't dance. So, I'm sure what it is.
Yeah, see, yeah, Rob and I are like, well, really?
Movement, I would say movement, expression, you know, feeling, storytelling.
I think of Shanna, I think of weaving, what a That's a dance, like,
Yes.
seriously. I was thinking of Jenna Harper's piece where she was writing all those names. So you're thinking of the act of writing and the expression of that turned into a visual piece. There's a dance in that movement of writing.
Well, just a quick aside, the fun thing about that is that before Janet was in residence with them, Janet was in residence at the Croft.
Oh.
And that's when we found the names,
Uh-huh.
and we actually made beads out of the names, put them on a necklace, and yeah, so it was just interesting, so like, yeah, what is this idea? And she was probably the only artist that's come, and I was like, when she arrived, it's like, oh yeah, not actually really a movement artist in the way that she would describe herself. But like, you have to say yes, because what she's doing is about habitation, which is embodiment, which is like, oh, yeah, so wrapped up, lovely.
Like Mamie's piece of weird. I mean, there's formative art that connects to dance.
So we've got performative nature, like movement, expression. And so I think there's that idea of so often, like someone described dance to me as the poetry of movement. Does that feel like a thing that works? Okay, and so if it's about the poetry of movement, like then it can like divorce it from the idea that it has to be proscenium based or performance based, because poetry doesn't have to be performance. Poetry can just be, some people just speak in poems, right? They're like the way that they speak is not. When they were going through grammar, they're like, and they just now speak in poems. Like poetry is just like a way of existing that pays attention to rules and also throws a bunch of rules away, but then really holds certain things in high standard. And then poetry also doesn't have to be beautiful. Some poetry, a lot of people would argue, is like really not beautiful because it's not connected to these like things that feel like beauty, like time, or maybe like meter, or maybe it's beautiful visually. Whoa. How am I supposed to read this? You know, like, so there's that kind of space. And so,
So I guess, you know, if I were to attempt to define it right now, perhaps dance is just any art, but the body has to be the medium. And so then I want to ask that question. Does the body have to be the medium?
that's a great question, right? Well, if we're going by the idea that dance is the poetry movement, then I would say our body doesn't have to be the medium, but a thing in motion would have to be the medium. And that brings me to the quote that I have for this section. Because usually every time I start a informal sharing at the Croft, I like to read a quote from Khmer A. Lamoth's Why We Dance. It's a lovely book that proposes, it's a very big book in a sense. It proposes that matter is not the building block of the universe. Movement is the building block of the universe, which is quite fun in the sense that probably unintentionally it's very much connecting to quantum physics, which was not really her intention, but that's okay. So I'll read this quote. I've read it before, but it's like, it's divine. And I think it connects to this idea of, does it have to be a body? I don't know. And then we constitute like, what is a body? So we need to move and be moved in ways that encourage us to cultivate a receptivity and responsiveness to the impulses arising in us as a result of the movements we are making. So I think that's like, feels cyclical. So then it says we need to be experiencing on an ongoing basis the pleasure of learning to make movements that unfold and release the ever-evolving movement potentials of our bodily selves, our health and well-being, as well as the health and well-being of our relationships and communities dependent on it. So I imagine, it's huge, a lot of words to digest. So again, forget the words. A lot of words.
I want to change the energy.
Hmm,
Yes.
yeah, the shift. Right. We already did the move together moment, because I was gonna have us all move together to votes. We'll bring this back. Yeah, and I think just the last thing that I think about with movement. What I mentioned before, like how, for me, the difference between dance and just movement is intention. So, like, when I go to a wedding, the moment I'm there for at the wedding is the dance on the dance floor, but not so other people see me. So I can just like move the love that's in the space and just like be the best version of myself to be like, yes, you made a choice. It's awesome, right? Like full support. And so to me, then it's like that act of celebrating. If I go out and I dance in the street, I could be celebrating 1,000 things, but other people don't know that I'm celebrating things. But like, it's not in a celebratory context. So I'll tell you, I've gotten a lot of looks, right? And a lot of those looks have in their eyes the question, what are you on? Right? And I was thinking about that too, just in this context of, like, to me, like the idea of movement, embodiment, dance, is about learning to listen to ourselves. And not like just on an emotional context, but like, how do I drop in and just, what does it mean to rotate my wrist? And like, really, just what does that mean? And so that's part of the reason why I think a lot of people think I'm on drugs when I'm dancing in public spaces, because I'm here, and maybe I'm even smiling at you, but I am in my wrist. Like, what is he doing? Well, I'm feeling my interosseous membrane. Okay, I mean, it's like, it's a thing. It's pretty cool. Just try it. But also then like, oh, that feels like a very, so this idea of being present and noticing and allowing us, because then it allows us to track ourselves, and the better we can track ourselves and notice how we're feeling, the more attentive we can be to space and be like, wow, how are you feeling? I'm feeling pretty grounded right now. Like, how are you feeling? Or if I'm not feeling grounded, I can reject, because that's really bad on my knees right now, but I'm still here with this. So like, how can we be like aware, like, okay, these shoes are really not good for kneeling, but I've been kneeling the whole time. So I should probably open up. So yeah, those are the questions. Any specific questions for anybody?
I have a question. I just want to share something. So I line dance and I love swing and I've been clogging and tap, and it just gives me joy to connect to the music.
Yeah.
And I often get the steps wrong and I don't care. It's fun. It's joyful.
Yeah, and I think that's, so a performer that I talked to once was asking me, like, we were asking one another, like, what are we searching for when we perform, And I think we both said, yeah, what matters is that people like understand that there's joy. Like, what we're doing is joyful, even if like, okay, we had a really heavy moment right here, we really got into the weeds. Like, now you're gonna laugh because what happens is kind of silly, or maybe you're uncomfortable, but there's joy in it. Yeah, man, dancing, so much joy.
So someone made a comment about this dance. I would probably put myself in that category. However, my husband and I, at one point, we took some dance lessons, ballroom dancing and stuff. And I often think that it's our own inhibitions or whatever that hold us back, our doubts or whatever. I think we all can dance. It's just that, and then when you do, all of a sudden you're kind of free, the happiness and your emotions more. So I think everyone can dance.
Amen.
I think it's just, can you let go? It's a vulnerability to dance, I think.
It is a vulnerability.
Scary to be vulnerable, I think.
That's a big one, yeah.
That's a picture you at a wedding reception. I've been at one.
And actually, when it was time for people to dance, everyone was on the floor of all ages, with maybe the exception of 2 people I can think of that weren't out on the dance floor. But honestly, people were out there having a great time. I would love to see you in the middle of all that.
He was there or not?
No.
Oh.
I would have loved, I just.
Envisioned you in
Yeah.
that space. That would be great.
Ben, your space is so gorgeous out there,
Mm.
you know, with the dance deck and overlooking the lake and. Then at things you have at the schoolhouse, would you mind just sharing that a little bit of how you shared that gift of the art, you know, the arts
Sure.
you're hosting with the
Yeah.
community?
Yeah, share a little bit, and before I do that, I just really quickly want to jump onto that lovely idea that. Like we can all dance and like everyone's a dancer, with the most important thing I forgot to say when I started. That like movement is the mother tongue of all of us. Right? The way we learn to articulate through our mouth. To speak. Is by. These moments where we have these reflexes, these built-in reflexes that we have, that build the capacity to learn that we can move. To build the capacity to learn that we can move. We like learn how to move our body through reflexes, like it's the kid sitting here, and then like something touches their arm and they just. You know what? And that kind of stuff there. You know, and that happens, but like. Movement is the first thing, and what we're tracking when we're tracking our parents talking, we're like. Right, so it's like this idea that what happens so much is we get so separated from that mother tongue. It's there, it's inherent, like. The thing, but yeah, we get so separated from it, and then we're like, oh. It's not this thing, it's there. So in honor of time, as Sue proposed, yeah, and it reminds me that the dance deck that we built, I remember when we were building the dance deck, it's got a view. Up the bay, and my dad asked how we should build it, and I said, well, we need to build it with actual deck boards. Because the people, when they're choreographing, if they're dancing bare feet, like they need to have the memory of the wind. Caressing the bottom of their feet between the deck boards from them, right? Because then that moves on with that piece forever, even if it's not known. Like when they go and rehearse that in the studio, and you're like, whoa, wait, it's really hot down there, right? Like it's just with it, it's with that piece forever. And so yeah, we usually have sharings on depends. It's very emergent. We ask the artist, and then they choose whether they want to be in the schoolhouse, whether they want to be on the deck. And if it's on the deck. We live out on West Road in Portland Bay, and I just send out, I usually put stuff on Facebook or Instagram to let people know what's happening, what's arising. And it's usually small, sweet. I usually do an intro with an improvisational dance game, because there's not always like a really full amount of time. And then at the schoolhouse, we have sharings where we sometimes mix music and dance, and then sometimes projected dance. Or some dance film.
People know where the schoolhouse is?
The schoolhouse is in Horton Bay, right between Methodist Church and the township. And it is very derelict. Has no running water, no electricity, but we've got a solar battery. It's fun. And no heat, no, obviously, no electricity. So yeah, those are kind of the fun ways. And there's a group actually here right now. It's our last resident of the season. And they are going to be rehearsing the 316 studio today, actually. I looked at the schedule before to be like, maybe they're here. I can just be like, go down and say hi, but they're not right below us today. And they are having a sharing, and it's hard. I was like, I don't know. I guess this is the question for them. They're having a sharing that's a part of a class with the students, like at the end of their class. So I was like, I don't know if that's open or not. I mean, I guess it can be. Yeah, it can be, like, you know, if you want to walk up 3 flights of stairs on Friday.
It would start at 4, they're doing it at the beginning.
No, I'm gonna do it at the end. I think it started at 5. Close to 5. So if you want to walk up 3 flights of stairs on Friday.
5 p.m. tomorrow at 3:16.
At 316 studio, yeah.
And when you get an invitation to go there, you don't turn it down. Because those invitations are, they're coveted.
Yeah, and they'll be really sweet. The group's working on a ring shout practice. And I can't speak too much on the practice, but just this idea of, it's like it'll be for them very moving, very spiritual, it's deep, it's rooted. And like the company is called Moving Spirits, and they're like a Afro-Caribbean root company, and they come from North Carolina. So yeah, it's very sweet.
Then how many people usually come at a time to the residency, like in a group like that?
Yeah, usually it's 4. A lot of the times it's 4, and that's just because that's all I can pick up in my car.
They stay.
Between like the dream world for me is 2 weeks, but most can't because of the fact that our stipends can only be so large. Right, so because they can't be away for that long. And also because they're trying to coordinate like 4 different people's schedules who are probably dancing in like many different companies. So it's usually, yeah, they're always in a group. Yeah, and sometimes we have overlap between groups if there's, I mean, sometimes we've had groups of 4 and groups of 2, and there's like a little bit of overlap. And that can be sweet, and also challenging, but usually been really great.
What did you say about, excuse me, about the Traverse City ballet?
Traverse City Dance Project?
Yeah, just the relationship that you got with them. I think
Sure, yeah, I mean, we've hosted them the last 2 years, and we'll do it again.
they're quite a large group.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, so they're 14 people, but I don't pick them up at the airport, they deal with themselves, you know, so that's what we. Yeah, so we can do bigger space, but I can't do that.
How
many
people can you house?
We can comfortably. Because yeah, we've had 14 people in the house before, but I would not argue that that's comfortable. I wouldn't argue that it's uncomfortable, but if you're someone who's not like, who needs their own room, it would be very uncomfortable, but we can easily sleep 10. But also easily sleeping 10 does not mean that everyone has their own room. So, right, it's kind of like a. Which apple would you like? Are you the, I love lots of people all the time, or I need my personal space, and if it's that, then 4 is a good number. Yeah.
Well, we're at time.
Yeah.
It has been a pleasure to have you share with us today. So, thank you.